I'm Daisy.
And I'm Terry.
And this is the Monday Mindset Podcast,
where we share things of interest to us and hopefully to you.
So let's get started with episode number 132.
And this week, it's Daisy's turn to share something with us. Daisy, what do you have?
Well, Terry, I have got not one, but two newsletters for you. We're back to one of my favourite newsletters, which comes from Donna, Zajonc and David Emerald. I won't go over the dreaded drama triangle again. Listeners can go back if they're interested to the episode. I forget which number it was where I talked all about that, but I will put it in the description so they can go and listen to that. But they send a newsletter out, and it's so often it's funny, isn't it? How you're struggling with something or you're thinking about something, and suddenly a newsletter drops in and it illustrates it perfectly, or whatever. And the first one came in, and it just tickled me because I seem to remember it was my first ever episode when we started recording. The episode that I kicked off with was talking about gratitude journals. I could have that wrong, but I think it was the first episode. So this newsletter comes in and it says a new way to cultivate gratitude. So I thought, this could be interesting. Everyone loves a gratitude journal. We've talked about way back in that episode, and we've discussed it since, how important they are in general, but how important I found it. It really changed my whole perspective, the way I thought about things. It really was a very, very valuable exercise, and one that's worth repeating. So I thought, well, what are they going to bring that's new to it? And I read the newsletter. It's a very, very short newsletter. And I can't think of the best way to say it, but it kind of, did it put my back up? Did I sort of think, I don't agree with that? But when someone sort of challenges you with an idea that, first of all, you're like, oh, no, I don't like that. But it kind of stays with you and it ticks over in your mind, and you sort of keep coming back to think about it. And this was a bit like that for me. So I thought, well, clearly this is something I've got to share with Terry and with all of you at home. So they were talking about gratitude, and I think it was around Thanksgiving week that this newsletter came out. So obviously very topical. I believe that's what you do on Thanksgiving, you Americans. You give thanks. So I can remember on the day seeing lots of posts where people posting different things they were grateful for and expressing their gratitude. And they mentioned that during the pandemic, many people reported that accessing gratitude helped them really get through those difficult times. And they're saying that this, thinking of things to be grateful for has almost become a bit of a cliche and maybe lost some of its magic. And then they go on to talk about making a list of what you're grateful for is such a fabulous practice to do when it comes from both your head and your heart. They say simply making a gratitude list can at times be a bit more of an intellectual exercise, and it may leave out your heart and emotions. So here is their new approach to cultivating gratitude that can nurture an emotional experience. So they're pulling a different factor in that they feel maybe might be missing from some people's lists. So they say, pause for a moment, take a few deep breaths. Now create your gratitude list of the people, things, circumstances for which you are grateful. Fully appreciate their presence in your life. This next step may be the new approach to cultivate gratitude and feel a little strange. Imagine that all you just put on your gratitude list has suddenly disappeared. Picture yourself without the people and situations which you gave thanks for just a minute earlier. Really sit with your new experience for several minutes and feel the emotional loss. And this is where I'm like, oh, no, I don't think I like this. I don't like this new approach very much. This feels a bit negative. How is this going to be helpful? I don't get it. And you say, and now write a few sentences or words of how your life would look and feel without what you put on your gratitude list. And you say, for some, this new approach to gratitude may help you experience both your grateful thoughts and evoke grateful emotions as you contemplate the gifts in your life and what it would be like without them. And this is where they say that more than a transactional exercise of merely making a list, being in a state of gratitude is a full body experience that includes both the intellect and your emotional heart. Gratitude is often called a relationship emotion because it exists in relationship to others, yourself, or what you're appreciating. It's a complex emotion that doesn't stand alone because it seeds additional positive emotions. And then they talk about when you're in this state of gratitude, you're cultivating more positive relationships with yourself and life in general while nourishing your creator essence. And if you remember, it's the victim from the dreaded drama triangle that gets replaced with the creator that's in all of us in the empowerment dynamic. By intentionally noticing and recording what you're grateful for, you must purposefully look for what has heart and meaning for you. In the process of looking, you discover the little things that make up your life from moment to moment. And these little grateful moments become like a magnifying glass that enlarges your focus and connects you to lighter feelings, which arise when you focus on what you appreciate. And by combining both your intellect and your heart, you're literally teaching your neurological system what you value. And in the process, you counterbalance your brain's tendency to worry about problems. Gratitude, they say, is a generative act of choice that follows what you appreciate. And so if you place yourself in a state of gratitude, no matter what your circumstances are, you're more likely to see life as a gift. So they bring it round to something positive, but it was that moment when they said, imagine what it would be like if you lost all that kind of, like I say, it's sort of, I don't like this very much, but it stayed with me. I was pondering it. It was churning around in my mind, and I kept coming back to it and had a reread of it. And I was interested to hear what your take on that would be. You know, you sort of automatically think, well, thinking about losing things feels like a very sort of negative approach. But then I also thought, well, yes, as soon as you think about losing something, you put that extra value on it and being mindful. I guess maybe it felt very difficult and emotional for me because I've become very mindful about losing Bets. You know, she's getting older. Her health is deteriorating quite rapidly. And obviously I get very upset when I think about that time that's coming. But it's also, I think, very important to not focus too much on that loss, but be aware of it and how that changes your perspective a little in the moment. So I'm very mindful of appreciating every minute I have left with her. I'm very mindful about making sure that her quality of life is as good as it can be while it lasts and things like that. So, you know, I guess there were all sorts of these things churning around, and I hadn't realized sort of how relevant it was to me in the moment. And maybe that's why I've sort of found it a bit challenging and a bit difficult. But so that's where I can kind of see the value in it. But I'd be very interested in what you think about it.
Well, when I first heard you describe it, I maybe had a similar reaction to what you had. And I thought, oh no, don't go to that negative place of, okay, what if those were all gone? But you know that old saying of like, you never appreciate what you have until you lose it or something like that. Unfortunately, there is part of that for many of us, that we don't really acknowledge how important things are to us. We take them for granted or whatever. And so I assume there's something about doing this exercise that helps us connect with the value of things in our life. So it's not just I appreciate this and I appreciate this, but no, that my life, will be different without this thing, or there will be a hole without this thing, and helping us to connect with it more now. So, like I said, when I first heard you say it, I thought, oh no, because, I'm pretty big on trying not to go into that negative headspace, but I can see why having people do that could actually be helpful to really recognize the importance of that gratitude, if that makes sense.
Yes, and I guess it comes back to what they were saying at the beginning of the newsletter, that it's important that it's this full and rounded experience, and you need to have the emotional element. And I guess that's what they're forcing you to do, is to really go beyond it just being a list and really connect to that emotional part. And what's a good way of doing that? It feels like a bit of a brutal way of doing it, but it's certainly quite a good way of making you connect with that emotional side.
Yeah, it definitely activates the emotion rather than letting you stay in an intellectualization of, these are the things in my life that I'm grateful for. But to really connect with the affect tied with that.
Yeah, so I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah.
And the other one that dropped into my inbox, I think, just yesterday.
Just in time.
Just in time. But it was one of those ones that catches you in a moment. And this was, I won't bore everybody at home, and it always comes back to my dogs. But I did tell you all about it. I had a bit of a run-in in the park with another dog owner who was basically having a go at my dearest Rocket and telling me that he should be muzzled, basically so that her dogs could terrorize him without any fear of recrimination. And as anyone who knows me knows, if you have a go at my dogs, it's a surefire way to deeply upset me. So this newsletter came in, and it was very, very on point. The power of a purposeful pause. And to cut straight to the end, they list a few situations where it's a good idea to take a purposeful pause. And number one on the list is before you respond to a potentially upsetting email. And not that an email had come in, but I had been thinking of writing an email because this woman is likely to lodge a complaint with the committee. She's one of those types. So somebody suggested to me that I got an email in before she did that. And I did think about doing it, but I was in such a state that I knew that I shouldn't write it straight away. I should probably wait at least until the evening, maybe until the next day. So again, it made me chuckle a bit when this newsletter came in, and they're just talking about taking a purposeful pause. And again, it's timely. They kick off by saying one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself this holiday season is to take purposeful pauses throughout your day. And they say that when people first learn about the dreaded drama triangle, they tell us how it perfectly describes them when they are stuck in old reactive habits. And immediately they ask, how do I stop occupying the dreaded drama triangle and interrupt these old habits? And with practice, they learn that simply pausing and calming themselves before they engage in stressful situations is the easiest and quickest way to transform their reactivity. So that's that old, taking a moment and counting to 10 before you respond, isn't it? But they say that the power of the pause is huge and an essential key to moving out of drama. If you don't pause, you're at risk of living like a wind-up toy, continually hooked by fear-based feelings. And they call this a purposeful pause, and they deliberately emphasize the word purposeful. They say to ask yourself, what is the purpose of taking a pause? Is it to ruminate and wallow in your complaints, judge the situation and who or what was wrong? Or are you intentionally taking a moment to remember that you always have a choice about how you respond to life's challenges? So I won't get into the rest of the details on that, but I just thought it was a useful thing to remember, to just take that moment to take a few deep breaths, to count to 10. Maybe it's just, a few moments in your head, or maybe you have to take a bit of a longer pause, take yourself out of a situation to give yourself a chance to go into a bit of a recovery mode before you respond. And I'm thinking, in America, you've already started that time of year. But in the UK, we're coming up to the holiday season. We're coming up to Christmas, which often is a time where people are getting together that aren't usually get together. And there are quite often, it can be awkward and people are thrown together for longer periods of time than they usually are with family or whatever. And it can be a bit tense and it can get a bit difficult. So I thought this was a very timely reminder that it's often good to take a moment to just decide how we respond, and that we do have a choice and just not react in that moment. Because I tend to be quite reactive. So it was definitely a timely reminder for me.
Well, I think this ties back with something you and I have talked about in numerous ways throughout our time together here. But the idea about oftentimes in those moments, part of our brain is a little bit offline because our emotion, our threat center has been activated. Our amygdala, my favorite brain part, our amygdala has been activated, and our rational, more decision-making part of our brain isn't the part that we're coming from. It's not activated. And so pausing allows us to do something to shift into a different response. I always try to clarify this a little bit, but it doesn't mean that allowing the emotion isn't important. You're going to have that amygdala response. You're going to have, potentially that fight or flight response of kind of heightened awareness and tension. But that's not always the best place to respond to relationally, or making a career decision, or pushing send on that email. And in my work at the fasting method, a lot of it, we talk about it a lot, referring to making a decision about eating during that time. And it's normally going to drive you to, eat emotionally, eat problematically, or eat while you're planning to fast, which is breaking your kind of commitment to yourself. And so I like that purposeful pause, that it's not just hold on a second. It's know that there is a purpose for pausing here, and you want to get the rest of your brain online before you carry through with the action that your brain is triggering in this moment.
It also made me think of when they said, a purposeful pause, and thinking about it now and sort of planning for purposeful pauses when you might be heading into a situation that you're probably going to need some. So sort of thinking of how you can affect that purposeful pause when you need it. Because for so many people, these holiday meetups with families are a time of stress. And if you're not careful, and if you react in that moment, before you know it, you've said things that can't be unsaid, or you've done things that can't be undone. So I wonder if it's worth just sort of planning in how you can take a purposeful pause. What if you need an excuse to step outside, or whatever it is, just maybe sort of having a think about it, even rehearsing a couple of things that will just get you out of the potentially reactive situation you're in and allow you to take that purposeful pause that just gets you to a much calmer place that is not only good for you, but the other people that you're spending time with.
Great time to take a restroom break.
Yes.
Get up from the holiday dinner table, walk into the other room, be away for a few minutes, be alone, come back. Oftentimes the setting has changed by the time you come back. You've changed and the setting has changed. So
yes, things have moved on and you're not back into that potentially reactive situation in the first place.
And if you come back and the reactive situation is still really flaring, then you can say, oh my gosh, I really don't feel well. I have to go back. And then you might need to go into another room for a longer period of time. But giving yourself those strategies of extricating yourself from those moments so that you don't quickly respond impulsively in a way that may really backfire for you. Perfect timing this time of year to think about that.
So a couple of things there to think about.
And I think fairly easy to apply. Start thinking about your gratitude, really try to connect to it emotionally, not just intellectually, and allowing yourself to institute purposeful pauses. Very good.
So I will try to take more purposeful pauses rather than be reactive when people criticize my dogs.
Yes, Daisy. So we both have opportunities, I think, where we could use both of these strategies to help ourselves navigate things in ways that are productive and fewer negative outcomes in the long term.
I hope you have a very wonderful week.
You too, Daisy. Take good care, everybody.